I have a confession to make. A few years ago, I actually tried to play Resident Evil 7, and I didn't make it past the first hour. The southern gothic setting, the desolate house, the tension of walking into a place that just felt so evil. And then finding my missing wife, only for her to suddenly turn on me, become possessed and literally cut my arm off. I thought I was about to save her, and instead the game threw me into one of the most intense and disturbing openings I've ever experienced with a video game. This wasn't the kind of horror that slowly eases you in. It throws you straight into the deep end, and by the time Jack Baker burst through the wall and started chasing me through his house, I said f no and decided I was too scared to keep going. So I stopped. The idea of completing a full playthrough of something that unsettling felt impossible at the time. But a lot has changed since then. And with Resident Evil Requiem getting closer, looking absolutely phenomenal, I started thinking about the last few Resident Evil games I never completed. And instead of just skipping ahead to the latest game, I realized it was important to me to go back and experience them properly, start to finish, before earning the right to play Requiem. So this is the beginning of that journey, a retrospective series starting with what many believe is the scariest Resident Evil game ever made. This is Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, 9 years later.
This is the place.
Resident Evil is known for its scares, but what's even scarier is that 98% of people who watch my videos aren't subscribed. So if you enjoy deep dives into games you love, subscribing really helps me keep investigating more of them. But with that being said, let's get back to Resident Evil 7. In a recent interview with Games Radar, Resident Evil Requiem director Koshi Nakanishi said that Resident Evil 7, which he also directed, might have been too scary. That idea is part of the reason that Requiem will include a potentially less scary third-person option alongside its first-person perspective. Now, given how much of a tonal shift Resident Evil 7 was at the time, it's easy to understand why he might feel that way. The decision to go fully first-person combined with a focus on a more intimate, almost indie style of horror was a sharp departure from the bombastic action horror the series had become known for. And honestly, I am kind of a testament to his point. Resident Evil 7 was literally too scary for me. But revisiting it now, I've realized that the very thing that once pushed me away, the first-person perspective, is exactly why I eventually grew to love it. You're not just watching Ethan drive up to the Baker house trying to find his wife Mia. You are literally Ethan, driving up that driveway, seeing the house in the distance, approaching it and then finally stepping inside. I could feel my heart pounding as I entered the doors for the second time in my life. Everything about this house feels wrong. The walls, the clutter, the filth, the bugs. It's not just abandoned, it's decaying. And the game doesn't rush you, it lets you move slowly, forcing you to sit with that discomfort, never knowing what's around the corner. So every step then feels deliberate, and every room feels unsafe. Because in Resident Evil 7, the horror isn't just who's in the house with you, it's often just the house itself.
How long did you say this place has been abandoned?
3 years.
Clancy, get a shot of this. Let's make a great cutaway.
The Baker house is, without question, the most important location in Resident Evil 7. If the Baker family consists of 4 characters, I would argue that the house itself is the 5th. Nothing else in this game reaches the same level of fear, tension, or atmosphere as this place. And once you leave it, in my opinion, the game gets significantly less scary. Much like the police station in Resident Evil 2 Remake, the Baker house has an incredibly strong sense of place. It's terrifying, but there's also a strange appeal to it. The house is designed almost like a maze, but one that slowly becomes familiar. You learn how the rooms connect, which hallways loop back on themselves, and how the floors intersect. But just as that familiarity starts to settle in, the game deliberately undermines it. Enemies walk past doors and then disappear. You hear sounds in rooms you've already cleared. The house consistently makes you question whether your understanding of it is still correct. One thing that really stood out to me is the focus on doors. Opening a door in Resident Evil 7 is rarely instant. You push it open slowly. Even when you're trying to move fast, there's still a hesitation built into the animation. That little delay creates anticipation every single time. You never know what's on the other side, and the game makes sure you feel that uncertainty. And because this is a survival horror game after all, the uncertainty really matters. Resources are limited. Every bullet counts. Every wrong turn can put you face to face with something you're not prepared to deal with. The house is also where the game feels the most Resident Evil. After the intensity of the opening hours, the game settles into a familiar rhythm. You're collecting keys, unlocking doors, solving puzzles, and backtracking through familiar spaces with new information. This new information is often communicated through one of the most intelligent additions to the game, the VHS tapes. For example, in the opening hours of the game, you find footage of ghost hunters who explored the house before you, and instead of just watching it, you control the cameraman. Once again, it's a perfect example of why the first-person perspective is so integral to the genius design of the experience. You're filming this terrible ghost hunting show, starring a failed anchor who's clearly fallen far from where he thought his career would go. As you walk through the house with them, you realize you're retracing Ethan's own steps, seeing the same rooms, opening the same doors, just through someone else's eyes. And then, without warning, one of the greatest moments I've ever experienced in a horror game happens.
Although, this would make a great backdrop. Andre, what do you think? Andre? Andre! Andre! Clancy, you see where Andre went?
One of the producers disappears. There's no jump scare, no dramatic music cue. The anchor calls out for Andre, and Andre doesn't respond. And somehow that moment is scarier than any jump scare could ever be, because it plays directly with your perspective. In first person, you can only see what your eyes can see. Andre doesn't just vanish in front of you, he's just suddenly gone when you turn around. And the moment you realize he's missing, it sends a sharp chill down your spine. When you eventually find Andre dead with blood in his eyes, it confirms what the game has been quietly telling you all along. Something is deeply, horribly wrong in this place, and unsurprisingly, given the new information of a hidden passage found in the tape, you need to now go exactly where Andre was found dead. The VHS tapes continue to play a huge role throughout the game. They show you locations you'll soon visit as Ethan, so when you eventually step back into those spaces, you already know what was there, but you don't know if it's still there, and that's the genius of it. You're walking into a space that feels familiar, but is no longer trustworthy. And that tension between what you remember and what might have changed is what makes those VHS tapes so effective. By the time you've spent enough hours inside the Baker house, it stops feeling like just a location and starts feeling like another antagonist. But as important as the house is, it doesn't exist on its own, because the Baker house, well, it needs the Bakers. Jack, Marguerite, Lucas, and that really creepy grandma all represent very different types of horror. And what's especially interesting is how and when the game chooses to confront you with each of them. Jack Baker is arguably the strongest antagonist, and it's no coincidence that you face him when you're at your weakest. You barely have any weapons, ammo is scarce, and you don't fully understand the layout of the house yet. You're still learning how the game even works. Jack is really overwhelming because at that point you are completely unprepared and he just keeps relentlessly showing up. Jack isn't a traditional enemy that just waits in a room or only appears in scripted moments. He moves through the house the same way you do. He walks through doors, appears in hallways you thought were safe. Ethan! Ethan! All forcing you to move quietly, stay out of sight, and run when necessary. That said, and this is a very minor critique, so just bear with me, but Ethan runs way too slowly, and honestly, it can be pretty annoying. There were so many moments where I caught myself thinking, dude, just move faster, my guy. I understand that it's probably intentional, meant to build tension, but even with that in mind, his movement often feels slow in a way that just doesn't feel natural. His running pace sometimes feels closer to a normal person's walking speed, and during already stressful encounters, that can tip the experience from tense into frustrating, especially when you don't have any weapons to defend yourself yet. Now that's not to say that the game doesn't ever give you power, because it absolutely does. In fact, it gives you a lot more power than I was led to believe prior to playing it. This isn't like Outlast where you're only allowed to run and be scared. For as many butt-clenchingly terrifying moments as there are, the game often rewards your courage by giving you that power back when you need it most. And nowhere is that more apparent than in the final encounter with Jack. You're trapped in this small space, basically dueling each other with chainsaws, hacking away at him piece by piece. It is brutal, it's disgusting, and it feels kind of perfect. After all the stalking and the tension, finally taking Jack down in such a messy, physical way feels totally earned.
Do me a favor and stay dead.
Marguerite, on the other hand, represents a type of body horror. The way she moves across the walls and ceilings, the creepy sounds she makes, the way her body seems to reject its own form, it's deeply uncomfortable to watch, let alone be trapped near. It is pure nightmare fuel, and I remember so distinctly watching her deform for the first time and crawl away, saying "what the f*** out loud at the exact same moment that Ethan did.
What the f***? That's special.
And honestly, I really appreciate that the game gave me a flamethrower for this section, because at that point, that's exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to burn that bitch to the ground. By the time you reach Lucas, the dynamic changes completely. You've built up firepower, you've got ammo, so on paper, you're finally strong enough to take someone like him head on. And that's exactly when the game starts messing with your expectations. Lucas turns familiar mechanics against you. Crates that once meant ammo, supplies, and relief are suddenly sometimes rigged with explosives. Something you've been trained to trust becomes another threat, forcing you to slow down, second-guess yourself, or shoot them from a distance just to survive. And then the game takes all that firepower away. Instead of a traditional fight, you're forced to abandon your gear and step into a puzzle straight out of Jigsaw, relying on nothing but your wits. Sure, you'll fight Lucas with guns later, but not before the game reminds you just how quickly you can become vulnerable again. And then there's the grandma, who, to put it plainly, does absolutely nothing. And somehow that creeps me out more than all the others combined. Her presence is constant. She appears in the most random places throughout the house, just sitting there, her head slowly moving as she watches you. Every time you pass her, there's this unsettling feeling that something might happen. And honestly, combined with the soundscape of this game, that anticipation is just worse than any jump scare. I think this is what I and a lot of others seem to love about Resident Evil 7. The Bakers work so well because they each represent a completely different type of horror. Jack is the stalker, Marguerite is grotesque body horror, Lucas tortures your mind, and the grandma is just pure unease. There is at least one member of this family that will ultimately terrify you. But as terrifying and memorable as the Bakers are, they aren't the beginning of the story. They are the result of it. Because behind the family, behind the house, and behind everything that goes wrong in Resident Evil 7, there's one presence tying it all together.
We'll be together forever.
Eventually playing as Mia, your wife, and seeing the story from her point of view completely changes how you understand what's been happening. You start to see where Eveline comes from, how her powers work, and how she possesses people. Eveline is then revealed to be a bioweapon created by the government to control and manipulate enemies. But the experiment goes wrong, so instead of following orders, Eveline starts to rebel, obsessing over the idea of building a family. Getting that context reframes everything. The Bakers stop feeling like purely insane villains and start feeling like victims of something much bigger. The Daughters DLC goes even further, showing just how innocent this family really was, and how genuinely heartbreaking it was when Eveline ended up on their doorstep. And the word family here is important. Every single person Eveline infects becomes a part of that family. Mia is meant to be her mother, Jack her father, and the house itself becomes a twisted version of a home. I was also really happy to find out that Eveline's motivations have more going on than just demonic little girl being evil for the love of the game.
Watch it.
What? Why?
You need to remember, so we can be a family.
With Eveline, if you actually take the time to read some of the transcripts found throughout the game, you realize that there's a deeper psychological reasoning behind it all. Through some documents I found in a lab, presumably written by some psychoanalyst or something, you learn that Eveline's obsession with family may stem from the fact that she never had one to begin with. I mean, think about it. She was born in a lab, raised as an experiment, and treated as a weapon instead of a child. And as a form of rebellion, Eveline lashes out like a true teenager, creating a family that can literally never leave her or scold her. Even the molded enemies you fight throughout the game are a direct result of Eveline's infection spreading, and despite their seeming simplicity, I really think they're some of the smartest designed enemies in recent memory. The way the molded move make landing headshots frustratingly difficult. Their heads sway unpredictably, and in a game where ammo is scarce, you're forced to slow down and really think about every shot. Combined with the intensity of them sometimes running at you or silently creeping up behind you, that head movement creates a constant sense of panic. I've actually seen a few people online complain about the lack of enemy variety in Resident Evil 7, which I think is a fair critique, but I never personally felt that while I was playing. And actually, in my opinion, had there been more enemy variety, it might have actually detracted from the entire experience. To me, adding more enemies would have taken away from the power of the Bakers as truly gut-wrenching antagonists, and possibly even weakened the game's intensely gloomy atmosphere. A lot of the horror in Resident Evil 7 comes from its willingness to be quiet, to sit in silence and make you uncomfortable in that stillness. That said, I do feel the game has a noticeable uptick in action over horror in the later sections of the game, and while that shift makes sense on a story level, I can't deny that it's also where the game started to lose my attention. I found the final boss fight with Eveline especially underwhelming compared to the other encounters with the rest of the family. It largely boils down to a bunch of scripted moments and quick time shooting, which felt far less exciting or scary than what I was hoping for the game's final confrontation. Although I do really like the reveal that the grandma has been Eveline all along. It's a nice touch and I really didn't see it coming. When Resident Evil 7 is at its best, in my opinion, it's also its most intimate. Being trapped inside the house and then moving slowly, trying to stay alive. When the game becomes louder with massive monsters and very little player agency, that intimacy disappears, and for me, that really hurts the final moments of this game.
Ethan. You were right. I did lie to you. I shouldn't have. All I can say is that if you get this, stay away.
Short answer, yeah, it's pretty scary, man. But honestly, focusing only on how scary Resident Evil 7 is also does it a disservice, because the more time I spent with it, the more I realized that the fear isn't even the most impressive thing about it. Resident Evil 7 is just a phenomenal video game. It's masterfully designed with intricate multi-layered level design that consistently recontextualizes familiar spaces. It understands pacing, it understands restraint, it knows when to scare you, when to empower you, and when to just let you sit in silence and feel uncomfortable. It's also the Resident Evil story I enjoyed the most. The Bakers are some of the most memorable characters the series has ever had, not just because they're terrifying, but because they feel distinct, personal, and tragic in their own messed up ways. And Eveline, for all the horror she causes, is more interesting to me than a lot of the series villains because there's an actual emotional core behind her. It's the Resident Evil game I thought I would struggle with the most, the one I assumed I'd have to force myself through. Instead, by the end, I was genuinely enjoying my time with it. And for a game I once walked away from in fear, that is a pretty satisfying place to end up on. Next up on the list is arguably the most popular Resident Evil game and the one that most people claim is the best. So, let's see if the rumors are true. But in the meantime, if you enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like as it really does help me, and subscribe if you'd enjoy a channel that, simply put, investigates some of your favorite games. And I'll see you in the next investigation. Thank you for watching.